We're now joined by head coach Mark Mears of the Latrobe Wildcats. And yes, this is his daughter, Hannah. And talk a little bit about that dynamic, Hannah, how it feels to be up here interviewing your father, probably for the first time professionally.
It is. It's the first time professionally. It's pretty cool. I mean, I have a picture of us at home, and I was sitting on the mat in a binky, sucking on a binky, probably still wearing diapers alongside of him while his wrestlers are warming up. So I grew up all around wrestling. It's really cool to be here with my dad. This morning we're icing Christmas cookies, and now we're here talking wrestling. So if that doesn't say Mears family right there, I don't know what does. Food and wrestling. So,
Coach, welcome, and thank you for joining us once again. Talk about how this feels to be out here. I mean, your daughter, she said earlier that they called her Bleacher Baby, and now here she is, a professional, and she's on a part of our team, and we're so excited to have her.
Well, she got the short end of the stick of being drug along everywhere with a big brother that happened to be a year older than her. So, and I'm also glad to see that all my $100,000 to Penn State is actually doing something now for my daughter. So, but I know it's exciting. It's fun to watch her. I watch her at home. You know, it's interesting when you watch somebody begin their career and work so hard. So I'm pulling for her.
Good
and
deal.
The cookies were good this morning.
Yeah. Nice.
I test the icing.
You saved some for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, though,
a few.
Right, Coach? Okay.
Santa Claus needs the
sure.
cookies.
Yeah, the fat man comes down the chimney. He needs his sugar to get back up.
Yeah. Wait a minute.
Coach, talk a little bit about your career. You've been around the wrestling circuit for some time, and share with our viewers your path to here.
Well, I, of course, wrestled all through high school and wrestled for Lock Haven University. And then actually I coached previously at Latrobe. It's actually where my coaching career began in 1990. And I coached there for 9 seasons, 7 as an assistant at the high school and 2 as the head junior high coach. Then I went to my alma mater, Mount Pleasant, became the head coach there for 8 seasons. And then I had about a decade break, I guess you would say, so a little over a decade. And now I'm coming back, and it's kind of like watching 3 eras of wrestling. You know,
sure.
But wrestling's a sport that's different but the same. You know, it's just good wrestling, sound wrestling, conditioning, lifting, and it's more mental than anything. So a lot has changed, but a lot is still the same.
And I think what's kind of neat is that decade off, I'm kind of guessing that was whenever your children were competing in their sports, wrestling, and of course Hannah's soccer, so it allowed you that opportunity to go watch them, right?
It did, and to be very honest, Latrobe at that point had offered me a chance to be an administrator, and in Latrobe they don't like their administration to coach things, and understandably, especially as a transportation guy at the time. So I talked with my wife, and we just decided, look, our kids are in 3 sports each. It'd be very difficult to continue coaching anyway because, if I'm going to coach Tyler, I'm going to miss Hannah playing basketball. So it seemed to be the time to kind of step aside, and it was time for my kids to take priority, and I never regret that for 1 minute. It was exciting. It was fun to watch all their achievements, and now I have another son coming in 8th grade, and he's a wrestler now again, so I'll actually be able to spend time with him in this capacity. So I've always kind of put my kids where it was their turn.
Sure.
And you mentioned as well, this will be your first time stepping back in as the coach. You were also the athletic director. So from your perspective last year, what did you see from your team? What are you walking into this year as the coach?
What I've noticed is, of course, we're all in weird times right now, but it's a very young program. Very young. I mean, it could be we might only start 1 senior and only have 2 in the team. And that has its upsides and downsides. The upside of that is I have some time to work with them. I'm going to spend a few years with them. Most of them are there for 2 or 3 more years, the core of the lineup. It's better than walking in, everyone's a senior, and you're trying to get them to believe in you in a matter of 2 months. So it's been a growing period that way. And what I've noticed is that they're hungry to compete, and they're hungry to train. And this team is real similar to some of my Mount Pleasant teams. A lot of them wrestle year-round, wrestle for Young Guns. Everyone's familiar with Vinny Kilcarry and Roth. And so we have some talent and Borio at the upper weights, but they're all young. They're talking 9th and 10th graders, so we got a ways to go, and I'm excited about that.
And we'll hear from Vinny Kilcarry in just moments, as I did have time to talk to him before this happened. But one thing he mentioned about your team that really stood out to me, and you'll hear this, is that he said it's a lot more structured, and it's really nice to have an organized room to be in. So when your wrestlers are coming into your room to practice, take me through what that scheduled workout is like for them, what he's talking about.
Well, probably what he's referencing, I don't know what the structure was in the past. I don't know how they ran their practices, but maybe it's the teacher coming out of me. You got to have a lesson plan for what you want to achieve that day. You can't just throw darts at the wall. So when they weigh in, there's already an itinerary of what time we're doing what each day, what you can expect. And when I say we're done at 5:45, we're done at 5:45. I've implemented a lot of strength training and conditioning that I think was probably a piece of that culture that might not have been as pushed over there. But I have a professional conditioning coach and a professional strength coach, so we've kind of run it more like a collegiate style, and I think they like that. But they know every day when they come in, this is what we're doing, this is what time we're doing it, this is how long we're doing it, and this is where you're expected to be and when. And it doesn't surprise me that Vinny would like that, because I think most kids like structure. They like to know what's it going to be and when's it going to end and what do I have to do.
Sure.
That's
Coach, can
my theory.
Talk a little bit about some of those individuals. I know you had mentioned Kilkeary and Roth, but talk a little bit about, what it's been like last year, watching Kilkeary did what he did in a state tournament. And, Roth, unfortunately, the shoulder injury kept him potentially from the podium. I think he was definitely a top 6 guy.
Oh, I think he might have been higher than that.
In a very tough weight class.
Yeah. Well, I think the Connellsville boy placed in the top 6, I believe, that he got hurt wrestling.
Yeah,
he
sure.
was up 14 to something. He was almost teching him in the WPL. So I agree with you. I think Nate definitely was on the podium.
Oh.
What I've noticed is, and I say this all the time in wrestling, and it really showed out. And I was up at the state tournament, of course, and with Vinny, it really shows out that I said when 2 good kids wrestle, it's those that don't make mistakes that are going to win. It's like football. Don't turn it over if you want to beat a good team. When you wrestled Bethlehem Catholic, Jeff Karams, their coach, was a teammate of mine in college, and I think, for example, just picking neutral and letting Vinny up and let him throw that kid there was the opportunity, and Vinny was able to capitalize on that opportunity. And I think what I see in Roth and these kids they're very explosive. They're hammer points, I call. They're always on the verge of 5 points, and they're leaders. And I can see a future for both of them probably at a Division I level, I think.
For sure, yeah. I recall Nate Ross, first time we covered him was last year against Derry. And I forget who he went out and wrestled, but he got taken down, I believe, twice. And then, he was taken down, let up, and then taken down again. And for a freshman, I was just mind blown at how much poise he had. There was no panic. And then, of course, he commenced in an absolute butt whooping after that. It was kind of like he had to get it out of his system. He was down 4-1, and then he just turned the corner and really turned it on. And that's something you don't really see from a 14-year-old and a freshman in such a high-level program.
No, and when you talk to Nate, I laugh sometimes. I feel like I'm talking like a 45-year-old guy. He's just that mature and that advanced. And I was trying to talk to him one day about his theories out there and match awareness and things, mat presence and things you need to know, and the difference between a mat awareness and match awareness. And he's, well, I just prefer to pin him, coach. I said, well, I prefer you do that too. The room's fun. I mean, him and Vinny and great partners there. And we have Gabe Golden has returned to Latrobe Wrestling, and people will realize that in a hurry when they see him. And
yeah, sure.
Corey Borio, you got to look at a kid like him who was in 9th grade. Anytime a WPL wrestler wins 30 matches at 170 in 9th grade, you've got a future. You've got a future.
Sure.
Yeah, he just has a few things we're working on, but Corey will be heard from too.
Coach, talk a little bit about the junior high program and what the future looks like for the Wildcats.
I think the junior high team this year is actually going to be pretty good. I mean, we have a lot of young talent down there, and they have about 20 kids on the team, and that's, I think, going to be the future of wrestling. I don't know that you're going to see teams anymore, 40 and 50 kids, but they have little Luke Willowshell down low down there, and Leo Joseph right up. Those two are both dynamite little lightweights. They have 4 or 5 upper weights. We have a new walk-on heavyweight in 8th grade who's about 250, a football tackle that has come out for wrestling. And they have what I call a bunch of average kids sprinkled in their lineup, but on the side of that, I took 4 or 5 key 9th graders off of them for 2 reasons. A couple can start, but I was afraid of the COVID year where junior high was, I think, going to get pushed to the side pretty fast if things get bad. So I didn't want the 9th graders to only get 1 or 2 matches when they could probably benefit at least by being in the wrestling room all year with the varsity kids. So I pulled as many 9th graders as I thought could handle the wrestling room up. So that might have depleted their look a little bit. but they're still going to be pretty tough.
And I had a question for you. Growing up, I always knew the teams had a motto, something to follow every year, and it was cool for the fan base to kind of get on board with that as well. And Vinny Kilcarry had told me something about staying together. So what is it that you're trying to preach to this young team that you have to buy into your system, stay together the rest of the year?
That's been my saying every time I've coached. At the end of every practice, every competition, I make the kids come in the middle, and we always say 1, 2, 3, stay together. I think it's important that they realize when you go to a match, you go to a tournament, you're going to battle. You're going into battle together. You stay together. And by that, I mean you don't, like a Vinny Kilcarry I don't expect him to wrestle and then go out in the stands and sit with his buddies from Norwin, say.
Sure.
That, you stay with your team, you stay together in this thing, and we're going to see it through. And I think that mindset sets in it, hey, we're a team and we're all in this together. And that's just been my mantra, always stay together.
Good deal. Coach, we just want to wrap this up with you. Thank you so much for taking the time, baking cookies and then coming out and hanging out with us. Food and wrestling. Hannah nailed it. What else
While
is better?
you eat your pizza, Chris.
Yes, I will. I have half-less.
I'm going to go home and eat my cookies.
All right. Hey, Coach, thanks for joining us. That's head coach Mark Mears. When we return after these messages, we will have Vinny. Are we running right into Vinny?
No, of course.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be Zoom meeting that Hannah had with Vinny Kilcarry, last year's state champ at 106 pounds from Latrobe High School. We'll be right back on the Westmoreland Sports Network.